Emmerdale fans have been left feeling completely broken over a Cain Dingle twist in what they're describing as the best episode of the year. ITV soap viewers will remember that Cain, Jeff Hordley, was shot in the Corriedale crossover last month. Later, at the hospital, the Dales legend learned the doctors had found something abnormal in one of his tests, so they were going to investigate further with a biopsy. Just hours after his wife, Moira Natalie J. Robb, was wrongly arrested for the murders of Celia Daniels, Jay Griffiths, and Anya Barisha, Alia al-Shabibi, Cain headed to the hospital to receive his test results. During Wednesday, February 4th's episode, which is now available to stream on ITVX, the consultant, Miss Rhodes, Lucy Lowe, revealed the devastating news that Cain has aggressive yet localized prostate cancer. The doctor suggested that Cain undergo a radical prostatectomy before listing the potential side effects. Overwhelmed by the diagnosis and the prospect of surgery, Cain quickly left the appointment and returned to the village, struggling to process what he had just learned. His denial and anger soon caused him to clash with his loved ones, including his brother Sam, James Hooton, and granddaughter Sarah Sugden, Katie Hill. Cain also chose to ignore a phone call from Moira, who is currently being held in custody. Cain reached breaking point in the Woolpack after his friend and local GP, Liam Kavanagh, asked if he had received his test results. Cain later sought a loan at his father Zach's graveside, struggling to cope with his diagnosis. Sarah soon joined him, with Cain eventually opening up to her about his illness. "I'm not well. After the crash at the hospital, something showed up on my scans and they wanted to run more tests. I told myself it was nothing, but I was wrong," he admitted. Sarah replied, "Listen, you don't have to go through this on your own. How many times have you told me that? How many times did Zach say that? Listen, we're family. This is not just about you, all right? We're in this together from now on. You don't have to keep it inside anymore." Cain then revealed, "I've got cancer. Were you scared? Because I know I am," before tearfully embracing his granddaughter. The episode has resonated with ITV viewers, particularly as it coincides with World Cancer Day. Many have shared their emotional reactions on various social media platforms, with one person writing on X, formerly Twitter, "I'm a mess, completely broken, tears and snot everywhere. This Cain and cancer story is destroying me." Another added, "Wow, no words. What an episode. Jeff Hordley was absolutely incredible. I'm sobbing. A very real, raw, and honest representation of a cancer diagnosis." While a third said, "Today's Emmerdale episode was devastating. Jeff was amazing. Sobbing already, and it's only the beginning of this storyline." Someone else wrote on a Facebook fan page, "Definitely the best episode of the year so far." Another viewer similarly shared, "I'm a blubbering mess. People moan about silly storylines and soaps and how they're all doom and gloom. But if Cain's diagnosis can save just one man's life, then that's got to be a good thing." Emmerdale viewers are no strangers to heartbreak, but Wednesday night's episode delivered a gut punch so raw, so painfully real, that many fans have been left describing themselves as completely broken. In an hour of television that stripped its characters bare and laid grief, fear, and love out in the open, Cain's latest storyline has already been hailed as one of the soap's most powerful moments in years, and for many, the best episode of 2026 so far. The emotional installment, now streaming on ITVX, saw Cain, Jeff Hordley, finally receive the results of the tests he'd undergone following last month's dramatic Corriedale crossover shooting. What followed wasn't just a medical diagnosis. It was the slow, devastating unraveling of one of Emmerdale's most iconic hardmen. And viewers felt every second of it. A storyline months in the making. ITV soap fans will remember that Cain was caught in the crossfire during the explosive Corriedale crossover last month, leaving him hospitalized after being shot. At the time, the focus was understandably on whether Cain would survive. But quietly, subtly, Emmerdale was laying the groundwork for something much deeper. While recovering in hospital, Cain was informed that something abnormal had shown up in one of his scans. Doctors advised further tests, including a biopsy. But Cain, ever the stoic, emotionally guarded Dingle, brushed off the concern. To him, it was just another hurdle, another inconvenience. Cain Dingle doesn't panic. Cain Dingle doesn't show fear. Or, at least, he usually doesn't. As the weeks passed, Cain's test results lingered ominously in the background, while chaos erupted elsewhere in his life. His wife, Moira, Natalie J. Robb, found herself wrongly arrested for the brutal murders of Celia Daniels, Jay Griffiths, and Anya Barisha, Alia al-Shabibi. With Moira in custody and the village reeling, Cain headed to the hospital alone to receive his test results, the tests he'd tried so hard not to think about. It would change everything. The diagnosis that stopped
Wednesday's
Emmerdale.
episode, viewers watched as Cain sat across from consultant Miss Rhodes, Lucy Lowe, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the sterile hospital room. In a quiet, measured voice, the doctor delivered the news that no one, least of all Cain, was ready to hear. Cain has aggressive yet localized prostate cancer. The words landed like a bomb. Miss Rhodes carefully explained that while the cancer had not spread, its aggressive nature meant swift action was necessary. She recommended a radical prostatectomy, outlining the surgery and its potential side effects with clinical honesty, including the possible impact on continence and sexual function. For Cain, a man whose identity has long been tied to strength, control, and masculinity, the implications were overwhelming. Jeff Hordley's performance in these moments was devastating in its restraint. Cain barely spoke. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered, and then, without warning, he stood up and walked out. No shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just a man in shock, fleeing the reality he couldn't yet face. Denial, anger, and a man at war with himself. Back in the village, Cain spiraled. Unable or unwilling to process what he'd just been told, Cain slipped into denial, his fear manifesting as anger and hostility toward those closest to him. He snapped at his brother Sam, clashed with granddaughter Sarah Sugden, and shut down any attempt at concern or comfort. Perhaps most tellingly, Cain chose to ignore a phone call from Moira, who remains far behind, terrified and isolated. For a man who has weathered countless storms alongside his wife, Cain's decision to avoid her spoke volumes. He couldn't say the words out loud. He couldn't let anyone see him afraid. The tension reached breaking point in the Woolpack, where Cain's friend and local GP, Liam Kavanagh, gently asked whether he'd received his test results. The question was simple. The reaction was anything but. Cain lashed out, his pain spilling over in a way that felt frighteningly real. This wasn't soap opera melodrama. This was a man unraveling under the weight of his own mortality. A quiet moment at Zach's grave. The episode's emotional core came not from shouting matches or dramatic revelations, but from silence. Later, Cain was seen alone at the graveside of his father, Zach Dingle, whose death still casts a long shadow over the family. The camera lingered, allowing viewers to sit with Cain in his grief as he struggled to reconcile the news he'd just received. For years, Zach had been Cain's moral anchor, flawed, stubborn, but endlessly loving. Now, in his absence, Cain was forced to face the biggest fear of his life without him. It was here, at Zach's grave, that Cain's walls finally began to crack. "I've got cancer," a moment that broke viewers. Cain wasn't alone for long. Sarah Sugden soon arrived, sensing that something was deeply wrong. What followed was a scene that many fans have described as unbearably emotional and beautifully written. In halting, broken sentences, Cain finally found the courage to speak. "I'm not well. After the crash at the hospital, something showed up on my scans and they wanted to run more tests. I told myself it was nothing, but I was wrong."
Sarah listened, her voice steady, her presence grounding. Listen, you don't have to go through this on your own. How many times have you told me that? How many times did Zach say that? Listen, we're family. This is not just about you, all right? We're in this together from now on. And then came the words that shattered viewers. I've got cancer. Were you scared? Because I know I am. As Cain broke down, Sarah wrapped her arms around him, holding him as he cried, not as the feared Dingle enforcer, not as the village hard man, but simply as a grandfather terrified of what lies ahead. It was raw, it was honest, and it left many watching and floods of tears. Fans react, tears and snot everywhere. The episode's impact was immediate and overwhelming, particularly as it aired on World Cancer Day, giving the storyline an added layer of poignancy. Social media was quickly flooded with emotional reactions from viewers who saw their own experiences reflected on screen. One fan wrote on X, formerly Twitter, "I'm a mess, completely broken, tears and snot everywhere. This Cain and cancer story is destroying me." Another praised the authenticity of the portrayal. Wow, no words. What an episode. Jeff Hordley was absolutely incredible. I am sobbing. A very real, raw, and honest representation of a cancer diagnosis.